What's up, everyone? It's your girl Brainy Shanae, and today is my stop for Hear Voices book tour, and I'm going to be doing a book review for The American Queen by Vanessa Miller. This book is already out into the world, so if you haven't picked up your copy or haven't gone to the library, pick it up, or if you haven't, put on hold on Libby, I suggest you do so now because this is a book that I think everyone should read, especially when it comes to this particular book. A lot of people don't know about the American Queen, the Black American Queen that was located in the US, right? And I feel like this will be a fantastic book, and I think a lot of people don't know about this, particularly because Black American history is not being taught in schools, and we have the government, in the US that are trying to stop that for our kids to know for kids to know the history of Black America and what have you. And so with this particular book, we're following the main character, Luella, who is at the Montgomery plantation along with her father and her grandmother. Now, before I even get into what I really feel, because I don't want to do any spoilers for this book, I really want y'all to go out and read it and see for yourselves of how great this book is. This book does have the N-word in it. I know a lot of people don't like to read books that have the N-word in it, but Vanessa Miller herself, the author, has said something about it too, because she didn't really like to put the N-word in this book, but she has an explanation about that in her little Dear Reader. So she has a letter for Dear Readers. So it says, "A note from the author, Dear Reader. Thank you so much for picking up The American Queen. I hope it speaks to your heart in the way it spoke to mine. The hardest part of writing this historical novel was the hours, days, and weeks I spent researching information about the people in the Happy Land and the time period. But one of the most difficult things to write in this novel was the N-word. I cringed when I had to reread the story during the editing process because African Americans have been subjected to that word and other hurtful words that degrade for far too long. My editor and I debated about whether to use the hateful word at all. And believe me, if I were writing a contemporary novel, I wouldn't. Even though racism still runs rampant, we don't run into people who are willing to call Black people the N-word or other awful, debasing words to our face with no repercussions these days. But I still vividly remember when I was a young girl in the 70s, walking to the bread store with my sister to get a cherry pie. I can't even look at a cherry pie these days without gaining weight, but back then I loved those little cherry pies. We had just crossed the street and were happily making our way to the Wonder Bread store when a pickup truck drove past us. A white guy in the back of the truck had a cup in his hand. He threw the contents of that cup on me and my sister and then called us the N-word. It was the first and only time a white person had ever disrespected me in such a manner, but I never forgot the tears I shed over that hateful act. Now imagine how many times African Americans heard that word while they were enslaved or even right after emancipation. Imagine the hurt and the damage that being constantly called the N-word and not being able to do anything about it might do to a person. I use the word and other words such as mulatto sparingly in this novel. Hurtful as they are, they must be used in order to be true to the 19th century time period. I believe it was necessary to viscerally show the treatment of African Americans during this ugly period in American history. Some may think the word was used to shock or anger, but believe me, that was not my purpose. If I could have been true to the time period and the people who lived during those times without using those awful words, I would have. That might have been the easier route, but it wouldn't have been authentic. In writing this novel, I also didn't want to insinuate that all white people treat African Americans in such a reckless and harmful manner. This is the reason I was only too happy to write about the relationship between Luella and Sarepta Davis and her daughter Sarah. I also developed characters like Dr. Morris and his mother in order to show that there is kindness in this world and that color should not dictate kindness. I hope you enjoy the journey, and I pray that The American Queen sticks with you long after you close the book. I hope the goodness of many of the people in this novel shines through and blesses you in some way. Blessings, Vanessa Miller." So right then and there, she explains that she didn't want to, write the N-word, but she wanted to make this book authentic and realistic as possible back into the 19th century. So with this is a fictional account of the actual events that occurred between 1865 and 1889. And so, like I said, we are following the main character, Luella, who's at the Montgomery plantation, and she lives with her father. and her grandmother is trying to tell her like, hey, you should marry Reverend Williams, and she's like, no, because she doesn't really have that much love in her heart, not that much room in her heart to love someone. And then her father keeps telling them about, one day we're going to leave this plantation, we don't have to live, work here anymore for them, anymore. We can just live our lives and live happily, without looking over our shoulders constantly. And so he was the only hopeful person on this plantation. And then one day he, Luella found him in an unfortunate way that I really want y'all to just read the book. I don't want to give you so many spoilers, but she lost her father. And from that point on, she got tired. She got sick and tired of being tired and constantly being beaten. And eventually she did end up, finding the courage of eventually leaving this plantation. And her leaving along with others this journey, which took like a year. They went from Montgomery, Alabama, Georgia, to South Carolina. They end up in North Carolina. And that's where they end up creating the place called the Happy Land. And the reason why it's called the Happy Land is because Luella had dreams about this place, of being somewhere happy, of being somewhere where it was her own, of not constantly being terrorized, of being able to have her own house that she built from her hands, that she loved and appreciated, not some shack that really wasn't a home to begin with. And throughout this journey, you see Luella grow significantly from not having a lot of hope in her heart, and not having, didn't have any much love in her heart at all. But eventually, over time, she ended up overcoming all of that. She's gone through so much loss. And I feel like in the first couple of chapters, this book got me. It made me cry. And I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to the pain during that time of, of slavery, I really feel like, and how people feel like in America, like it's not a racist country or whatever. But if people can recognize the pain of what happened back then they may have an understanding of the struggle and what it is to be Black in America. And with this book, it makes you just want to just cry throughout the entire time because of all the pain and suffering. It felt like you were there. And I'm sure this book has, being there physically, I'm sure it's nothing compared to reading the book and then seeing it with your own eyes. Because just with that, it's just mind-blowing. And I can only imagine living in that period and seeing your loved ones being traded off to a different plantation, seeing your loved ones being brutally beaten. And with this book, like I'm saying, this book doesn't sugarcoat anything. And I'm glad that it didn't, because you can't sugarcoat that. You can't sugarcoat history. You just cannot. The thing that you can do is talk about the history and have people aware of it so that history doesn't repeat itself over time. And I think in America, where I am located, I can see a lot of things starting to repeat itself, because yet and still no one has learned from the past, obviously. Sorry, I'm not trying to be so emotional, because this book had me on an emotional roller coaster. But I really loved Luella. I really loved that she overcame, and yet she was still going through so much loss. She was still willing to live out her dream and live out the dream that her father had. And, there's also a bittersweet moment of when it comes to Luella and her mother, because we don't really know much about her mother. The only thing we did know was that she was sold to a different plantation, which, like I said, I don't want to spoil this for y'all. Y'all just gotta read it. You gotta read it for yourselves, because this book, there was times where I had to put it down. I'm not gonna lie to you, but that's how powerful this book is, how powerful the words are when it comes to Luella and her husband William and the Happy Land. And even when they have this land, that was during also the period of when, the Klan started coming up, and terrorizing them and burning their homes and burning crosses in front of their churches and stuff, and literally destroying what they built with their bare hands. And they overcame. They were like, you know what, this is not going to stop us from what we want to do. This is our land. And then next thing you know, after they end up staying on this land where they literally cut down all the oak trees around them because that land was sold to them, so they owned it. Now all of a sudden, some people, they look at the land and like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And then they want it for themselves because Luella and the people of Happy Land made it possible where they can make this land flourish and provide food for them. And the motto that they go, that is their go-to, their motto for the Happy Land is all for one and one for all. And that's the motto that they stick to within this book as they reach the Happy Land and build their homes. And there were some times where people left Happy Land because there were other family members elsewhere in the city, in the state, so there were people that came, and some people came and went. Some people stayed at the Happy Land. There was a lot of loss still, but I just seeing Luella grow and just overcome so much where she literally could have just gave up, that was very inspiring and very inspirational. And I just loved everything about it. Like, even with the synopsis, which I'll read out loud to you, it says, in 1869 a kingdom rose in the South, and Luella was its queen. Over the 24 years she was enslaved on the Montgomery plantation, Luella learned to feel one thing: hate. Hate for the man who sold her mother, hate for the overseer who left her daddy to hang from a noose, hate so powerful there's no room in her heart for love, not even for the Honorable Reverend William, whom she likes and respects enough to marry. But when William finally listens to Luella's pleas and leads the formerly enslaved people off the plantation, Luella begins to replace her hate with hope. Hope that will find a place where they can live free from fear. Hope that despite her many unanswered prayers, she can learn to trust for new miracles. Soon, William and Luella become the appointed king and queen of their self-proclaimed kingdom of the Happy Land. And though they are still surrounded by opposition, they continue to share a message of joy and goodness and fight for the freedom and dignity of all. And then it goes to say, a transformative and breathtakingly honest, the American Queen shares the unsung true history of a kingdom built as a refuge for the courageous people who dare to dream of a different way of life. So there you have it. I don't even want to get into more of it because I really want y'all to really read it. There's more information from the author of the closing notes of how she did her research about this particular book. It even says, I did extensive research around the area, time period, and even many of the people mentioned in the book. The sad incidences that happened to formerly enslaved people during the period of Reconstruction, some of which appear in the storyline, occurred all too often in those days. The 40-acre plots that had been given to some formerly enslaved people through General Sherman's Special Field Order Number 15 were taken back, and those people were left to live on the streets. Many Black people were rounded up and forced to work as involuntary workers on plantations in the South. The Freedoms Bureau did help some formerly enslaved people reconnect with family who'd been sold away. The Bureau also helped formerly enslaved people with name changes or simply allowed them to pick a last name because so many of them didn't have one. And of course, this is the time when the Night Riders and Ku Klux Klan came into being. It was a sad time for Black people as they tried to navigate their way through freedom and Jim Crow laws. But the glory in it is that so many Black people survived so that others could thrive. So yes, I really enjoyed this book. Yes, it was hard, but I'm glad that it was hard because back then during slavery was horrific. You can't sugarcoat history. You can't do that. The best thing that you can do, once again, is to educate people and to explain that it did happen, to admit that it happened and try to do better and make better decisions in order for this not to happen ever again, and to recognize the pain and suffering that they have gone through during slavery. This is not only just Black American history, this is American history as well. And it should be taught in the schools. It should be taught. It should not be ignored. Never ignored. Because there was a lot of people who lost someone. A lot of lives were lost. Family members were lost. Families were separated. and everything that has gone down during that time period. People, you know, even as they left a plantation, they were still being terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan. And to this day, there is still systemic racism. But a lot of people feel that there isn't, you know? There isn't. But like I said, it's just time for people to realize that slavery was real. It happened on American soil. It's not a myth. It's something that truly happened in history. And I'm just glad that Vanessa Miller had wrote this book and shared with us the story of Luella and William and the Happy Land. It was amazing, because Luella, like, she could have just remained being hateful and just had her heart filled with hate, but she didn't do that. She overcame it. She persevered, and she just found the good in things and remained hopeful when all that she had was taken from her. That tells you about a person of, like, even though you beat them down to their very core, someone is still able to lift themselves up and to make a life better for them and for their family and for the people around them that they love and care about. But I'm not gonna say anything more. Y'all gotta read it and see for yourselves of how much greatness this book has and what it has for when it regards to, you know, the year 1869 and so on. So I think you will all enjoy this book. Once again, it is hard. There may be times where you have to put it down, but this book is worth it for you to read it. And some people didn't even know about this, you know, about there being an American queen that was Black. So I think this will be a great book for everyone to pick up. But that is it. That is my little review for this awesome book, The American Queen by Vanessa Miller. I really hope you enjoyed this book review. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that bell to be notified when I upload more videos in the future. But once again, I really hope that you do pick this book up, because it's a fantastic read, and I think it's something that people don't know about and that they can learn from, you know, they can learn from this. But that is all. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I hope you're staying healthy and staying safe. And once again, thank you so much for watching. Bye, everyone.